What's going on, guys? I'm Tim Kelly. This is Phillies Stoplight. Phillies take 3 out of 4 in Miami. Back-to-back really excellent pitching performances from Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez. I don't know that either will be all-stars, but they're definitely in consideration. And when there's inevitably 2 or 3 of the guys selected that drop out, I think each one of them has a chance to potentially get added to the roster. So that's a takeaway from Miami. But the takeaway from this 4-game series in Miami was the whole Nick Castellanos saga. He was pulled in favor late in Monday's game in favor of a defensive replacement. Johan Rojas came into play center, Max Kepler shifted to right, and you had Brandon Marsh shift from center to left field. At the time of being pulled, Nick Castellanos, according to Rob Thomson, made an inappropriate comment. We don't know what that comment was, but I would imagine it was pretty bad because the next day he was not in the lineup. It was the first time in about a year and a half that he didn't start a game for the Phillies, so was unquestionably a punishment. But then he returned to the lineup Wednesday, and the ball always finds you, and in a crucial spot with Matt Strom kind of against the ropes in the 9th inning, the ball was hit to the wall in right field, and Nick Castellanos comes up, makes the catch against the wall. Maybe it wasn't a highlight reel catch, but it was a nice play. Miami's a big outfield, a tough outfield to field in, and he made a nice play to finish off the game. So there's no rest for the weary. Immediately he comes back in and is at the center of everything. Last night in the win that Sanchez pitched, and then Orion Kerkering came in for the save, Castellanos was not subbed out late defensively, even though it was 2-1. So I'm interested to see kind of where do things go with that. People have pointed out that he had at one point a 414 straight game errorless streak, which is impressive. I'm not disputing that. But at the same time, I don't think errors are typically how you evaluate outfielders. When you talk about errors, I think you're thinking more middle infielders, infielders in general. The problem with relying on errors is it only takes into account what you can get to. And if you don't get to a ball, it can be a bad play, but you don't get charged with an error. And there's also a lot of plays, if it's even 50-50 now, they don't give an error. So I just think in general, errors are not a great way to evaluate defense anymore, certainly not for the outfield. And when you look at some of the advanced defensive metrics, entering last night, he had minus 10 defensive runs saved. Last season, he had minus 11 defensive runs saved, which is bad. He's almost equaled that in half a season this year. He has minus 8 outs above average. Last year, he had minus 8 outs above average the entire season. Again, the metrics have never been good on him defensively, and he pointed that out in a conversation with Ty Daubert of Phillies Nation last week. But they have been worse this year, and I think when you're in these close games and you have, when you're trying to hold on to a lead, I think it's fair to say that we're going to put our best defensive outfield in here if you're Rob Thomson. And the best defensive outfield is Johan Rojas in center, Brandon Marsh in left, and Max Kepler in right. And it's not just Castellanos coming out of the game. Brandon Marsh is much better in left field than he is in center field. So you're maximizing your defense late in some of these close games. They did it in 2008 with Pat Burrell. Eric Bruntlett would come into games. It's not unheard of. Lachlan March of the Inquirer was one of the reporters down in Miami this week, and she did write in a story yesterday that Nick Castellanos has requested a packet of info from the front office that he'll get at the end of every series, kind of going over some of the defensive metrics, and he said he's going to try to understand some of them. And it's fine. It's good to try to understand them. I have heard a few coaches say that there's certain ways based on alignment that you can grade out better in these stats, so maybe they try some of that stuff. The bottom line is just, I don't know that he's going to get to some balls that Max Kepler would in right field. I know Max Kepler had the ball that he lost in the lights the other night, but is generally a good fielder. Brandon Marsh is a better fielder in left field than center field, and Johan Rojas is the best center fielder on the team. So we went through this a few years ago with Rhys Hoskins at first base, and I'm always careful, and Alec Boehm at third base, we've had this same discussion. I'm always careful to point out that just because a guy doesn't get good results at the major league level does not mean they're not working hard. And whatever you say about Nick Castellanos, you cannot question his work ethic. He is almost always the first one out there on the field. And usually that's taking BP, but then after taking BP, he usually goes out to the outfield with Paco Figueroa. So he's worked extremely hard on it. And I get why that could be frustrating. If you're someone that works hard and you feel like you make the plays that you get to, at the same time, if somebody else is more likely to get to a ball that you're not going to get to, it can suck to kind of have to come to that realization. But that's what's best for the team. And I'm interested to see. Obviously, Castellanos is one of the bigger personalities in the clubhouse. He's somebody that is an accomplished player. I'm interested to see, does Rob Thomson decide whatever upgrade we're getting is not worth this fight, or does it become something that they start to go to a little more? Because Nick Castellanos' first couple years here, they would do that once in a while where they'd bring in a defensive replacement. That was when they still had Christian Pache here, so they do that from time to time. Last year they didn't do it, and we asked them a couple times about it, and I really think it was out of a recognition of how well or how hard Nick Castellanos had worked to improve in the outfield that they decided not to do that. So I am a little bit surprised that this week they decided to do it, and it's certainly unfortunate timing that they decided to do it in the Miami series, which is essentially a home series for Nick Castellanos. I get that. At the same time, there were probably 3 defensive misplays last week at Citizens Bank Park, and it may have just been that the Phillies got to a point, Rob Thomson, the front office, everyone involved, that said, look, here are these numbers. Your eyes kind of back this up right now. He is not the best option late in games defensively. So I'm interested to see how it plays out from a strategy standpoint, because that is one of the things you have to balance in strategy, is that you don't want to anger veteran players. You don't want to have guys feel like they're disrespected. At the same time, it's the major leagues, and you have to do what's best to win the games late. So that's from a strategy standpoint. Now, from a relationship with Rob Thomson standpoint, Scott Fransky said on the broadcast 2 nights ago that Nick Castellanos did go to Rob Thomson after the game he didn't play in and apologized to him. Rob Thomson, from some of the reports I've seen from different people down there, Lachlan March of the Enquirer, Charlotte Barnes of the Athletic, a few other people, Castellanos or Rob Thomson basically said it's good, it's in the past, and I buy that. Rob he's an easygoing guy, but I think this week has shown some people that Rob can have an edge when he needs to have an edge, and I think that's probably a good thing for people to realize. One of the things, and this is a little bit of a side tangent, but I see people all the time, because Rob is chill and relaxed, like on camera, say, oh, he doesn't have a pulse or anything like that. Just from having dealt with him for a few years, that's not the case. Like, he's funny, he's energetic when he talks to the media. Like, he is chill, and he projects that, and I think that's mostly worked for the Phillies. But when he needs to turn it on, he can do that, and I would never assume because someone acts one way in front of the camera that they aren't capable of kind of acting tougher or whatever the case may be behind the camera when they need to be, or just having more energy, kind of changing the vibe. With that said, I am interested to see kind of how this relationship goes with Nick Castellanos and Rob Thomson moving forward. I thought in Lachlan's story in the Enquirer yesterday, Nick Castellanos had an interesting quote. He said, "We're 2 grown men that show up every day for work with the common goal of winning a World Series. If everybody just agrees on everything and doesn't speak their mind, there's not going to be passion there. Emotions drive people, especially passionate people." And that's true, and I do think that's something. It's like one of those things when teams have training camp in the NFL and guys get in a fight. It's like, well, they, at least in old days when they had 2 days or whatever, you've been out here in the heat for nonstop with these guys. Tensions boil over. It doesn't mean you don't ultimately like the guy and aren't ready to go to battle with him. And I think the most likely scenario in this case is that this situation is behind them, and they can hold this together for the rest of the season. Now, in the offseason, it'll be an interesting discussion, because if they are subbing Nick Castellanos out late for defense, or I know Matt Gelb mentioned in the story that in the past Castellanos hasn't liked when he's hit lower in the lineup. I would argue that Castellanos has only hit lower in the lineup when his performance has dipped. When he's performed anything like a middle of the order hitter, he's hit in that 4 through 6 range. But I'll be interested to see how that projects. Like, they can hold it together for the rest of the season, whatever happens. Then you still have another year of Nick Castellanos' contract. If he's being subbed out for defense or not hitting as high as he would like, and he represents himself now, he used to be a Boras client, now he represents himself, does he say, if this is what it's going to be next year, I'd prefer to be on a different team? I don't know. I think everyone is capable of looking at these defensive metrics and kind of that they don't paint a pretty picture, and saying that if he was going to go to another team, it would probably be as a DH. So he's playing right field here, and he may be subbed out later in some games when he wouldn't like that. But I think when they signed him, part of the plan was kind of for him and Schwarber to split things at DH, and then the Bryce Harper injury happened, and it kind of changed the course of the last few years for the Phillies. But there were concerns about his defense a few years ago, and he's a few years older now, and the defensive metrics have slipped a little bit more, and it's just something to consider. I think the relationship with Rob will be okay. I don't think there's going to be some huge clubhouse issue, but clearly there was something said that the Phillies and Rob Thomson specifically determined wasn't appropriate, and they acted as such. And I don't think I've seen a few people say, oh, you're blowing this out of proportion. Jimmy Rollins was benched for not hustling. That's not the same as saying something inappropriate to the manager. That doesn't mean that you say that and you get punished and that you can't kind of get your relationship back on the tracks. But it was obviously something was said there that there were some hurt feelings on both sides, and they need to mend some fences. And that's not like a 1 or 2 day process. That's a gradual thing that happens, and probably happens from both sides, rebuilding trust with each other. The Mets are coming into town starting this evening. It's TBA for the Mets tonight against Zach Wheeler. Griffin Canning is going to go against Mick Abel in Game 2. Griffin Canning was acquired by the Braves in the Jorge Soler deal, basically a salary dump. They non-tendered him, and the Mets picked him up, and he's been pretty good for them. And then Game 3 is a really interesting matchup of lefties. David Peterson, who is one of my more favorite pitchers to watch in the league, against Jesus Luzardo. That should be a fun one. So you have some good pitching matchups. The Mets bullpen is really good this year. Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Brazaban, Budo, they have some really good arms down there in the bullpen. So this is a series where if you're going to win it, you're going to want to be up by the 6th inning, or things aren't going to go your way. Juan Soto had a very slow start for him, only for him. The numbers would have been pretty good for anyone else. It's not slow anymore. He's got a 1.141 OPS in June. He's been on fire. Pete Alonso's pretty much been on fire the whole year. He's got a 1.040 OPS in June. He's going to get paid this offseason, and good for him. It was a little ridiculous how he got treated in a free agency last year. So, fun series. I mean, whoever wins this, I believe, will be in control. Well, the Phillies might have to sweep it. I don't have the division standings pulled up in front of me. But whoever wins, if the Mets win this series, they're going to be in control of the NL East. If the Phillies sweep the Mets, they're going to be in control of the NL East. But either way, with how poorly the Braves have played this year, I wouldn't rule the Braves out, but for now it does appear like this division is a race between the Phillies and Mets. So series like this, especially when you did not fare well in Citi Field earlier this year, they're going to take on a greater importance. So it should be a fun weekend at Citizens Bank Park. After this, the Phillies go back on the road, kind of a quirk in the schedule that they went away for 4 days, come back for 3, and then go back on the road. But fun, certainly an interesting week. When they went down to Miami, I'm like, this won't be that interesting of a series. Between the Castellanos and some of the close games, it turned into a pretty fun series. So that's going to do it for this episode of Phillies Stoplight. I'm Tim Kelly. Check out all our content on Pattison, and I will talk to you guys next time.